On to our other top story of the day. Libya back in the news as multiple factions face off for dominance in that war-torn country since the fall of Muammar Gaddafi back in 2011. Now, the eastern faction, called the LNA, Libyan National Army, led by 75-year-old Khalifa Haftar, who was backed by Egypt and the UAE, traded gunfire and shelling with the internationally recognized government in Tripoli. Around 150 people were killed, more than 500 others wounded. Joining us now to discuss, former U.S. diplomat Jim Jatras. Jim, multiple powers are at play here in Libya. The UAE and Egypt are backing Haftar, while Qatar is calling on the international community to enforce an arms embargo to stop him. What's your read on the things transpiring in Libya?
Well, I think we have to look at the bigger picture here, too. You know, any idiot can tell you how to turn an aquarium into fish soup. Reversing the process is extremely difficult. Once you break a country like Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and David Cameron and Nicolas Sarkozy broke Libya in 2011, putting that Humpty Dumpty back together again is not easy. So this fighting has been going on for years, ever since 2011, since Gaddafi was overthrown and the place was thrown into anarchy. Now, General Haftar can seize Tripoli, or if there's some kind of a political deal made to have a unified government for the country. I think that's a good thing as long as the Salafist groups can be eliminated, because those were the ones who were empowered during the overthrow of Gaddafi.
Now, we will get back to talking about them in just a moment here, but staying on outside forces, even Italy and France, who we just talked about with Notre Dame, they're at odds about Libya themselves. France is supporting Haftar in the east, while Italy, who has considerable oil interests, supports the Tripoli-led government by Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj. Now, the power grab stands to once again displace tens of thousands, maybe millions. There are at least 2.5 million people in Tripoli. Where's the U.S. on this, given, as you said, the U.S.'s role in toppling Gaddafi?
I haven't seen a clear indication of where the U.S. is on this. Generally, whichever side the Russians are on will be on the other side. And, of course, the Russians have had a relationship with Haftar, but they're also somewhat hedging their bets. I can't help noting that Haftar is an American citizen, so maybe we finally found an American colluding with the Russians. Maybe Mr. Mueller can restart his investigation here. But it is a problem for Washington when our closest allies, like France and Italy, are at odds over which side they support. Let's remember, Libya was an Italian colony back in the old days, not a French colony, but it was the French who actually took the lead in overthrowing Gaddafi in 2011. So it's a real mess. A
lot of Western powers here. Funny that you bring up that he is an American citizen, because General Haftar is an old military guy. He was once a top commander in Gaddafi's government at one point, and later had a falling out with him in the 80s. Haftar then was rescued by the CIA and then lived out here in Virginia for 2 decades following that incident, until Gaddafi was toppled. So how does his history play into the future of Libya?
I think it would be naive to think that the CIA and other American agencies don't have a continuing relationship with him. But again, as we say, he's been very close to the Russians as well. It seems, I don't know whether he has a thumb in many pies or many pies have a thumb in him, but in any case, I think he's probably somebody that a number of people feel they can work with. I don't really know what the stake is in the Tripoli government that the UN supports, given that it is dependent on various Salafist militias to stay in power.
Now, the UN has already shown that they've failed to produce any sort of peace plan for Libya. Now, it's been almost a decade since Gaddafi was toppled. This is leaving, obviously, the vacuum for Islamists to rise in Tripoli. Should there be a greater push then by the UN to tamp down these Salafist Islamist groups before it gets out of control?
I don't think the UN itself can do much of anything. The question is, can the Security Council come up with a position on this? Can the various actors that are supporting the different factions in Libya come up with a game plan that serves their common interests? And really, in Libya, that should amount to two things. One is, who can keep the Salafists down? And two, who can control the migration from Africa across the Mediterranean to Europe?
Now, speaking of control of the migration, France, again, they have nearly 5,000 troops along the deserts to the south and to the west of Libya. Many are criticizing this as the new millennium of colonization attempt. France says they're just trying to contain this tinderbox. What are your thoughts on their role?
Mais oui, madame. I think maybe we were seeing a second scramble for Africa here, just like we saw from the 1880s to before World War I. Let's remember that, again, looking at the big picture, that the Chinese are all over Africa.
Yes,
the Americans are very upset about that. The French have been very active in their former colonies, and as I say, even poaching in a former Italian colony here too. So I think there is some sense in which outside powers, the Saudis, the Qataris, all sorts of people, do want to advance their own interests in Africa and are essentially laying claim to territory, not in the old-fashioned sense of actually creating a colony, but of supporting their favorite factions in these countries.
I mean, we've seen how good that does in the Battle of Algiers, a little bit of history, but, you know, who listens to history?
Well, Henry Ford said history is bunk.
All right, we will leave it right there. Thank you for the enlightenment here, Jim Jatras.
Thank you.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.